Welcome to Vale Marks, where every story holds a lesson and every heartbeat carries meaning. What you are about to witness is not just a tale of a dog and a community. It is a powerful journey about loyalty, resilience, and the silent courage that often goes unnoticed. As the saying goes, the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. Stay with us until the very end. This video holds a message so deep, it may just change how you see the world. The sky over San Mateo darkened with a gathering storm. Black clouds billowed like restless waves, swallowing the fading autumn light. The wind howled through the streets, sending leaves skittering across the asphalt like startled birds. Rain soon followed, not as a gentle drizzle but as a relentless downpour that hammered the pavement, rooftops, and the wide glass facade of Harbor Point Mall. In the middle of that tempest, a lone figure struggled against the elements. Diesel, a weathered Pitbull with a coat streaked in mud and old scars, limped toward the glowing entrance of the mall. His steps were slow, each one weighted by exhaustion and pain. His ribs showed beneath his soaked fur. His eyes, deep amber, reflected neither fear nor desperation, but a quiet, stubborn endurance. When he finally reached the overhang at the mall's main doors, he collapsed. The cold tiles felt like ice against his skin, but they were dry compared to the streets outside. For a moment, Diesel closed his eyes, letting the shelter of the mall's awning protect him from the worst of the rain. He neither barked nor whined. There was no one left to call for. He had learned over time that survival often meant silence. Inside the mall, the storm was reduced to a distant roar behind layers of glass and steel. The air smelled of cinnamon pretzels, fresh coffee, and the sterile tang of floor polish. The early evening crowd shuffled between stores, unaware of the drama unfolding just yards away. On the second-floor balcony, overlooking the entrance, Elena Matthews stood like a lighthouse keeper, watching over a restless sea. Her tailored blazer and sleek dark pants reflected her precise, no-nonsense nature. At 42, Elena had built Harbor Point Mall into a pillar of the community. But recent financial reports told a harsher story. Sales were down. Renters were late. Rumors whispered that the mall, once a thriving hub, might soon fall to the same decline as others across the state. Her gaze had been fixed on the numbers, the charts, the urgent emails. But now, her attention drifted toward the main entrance below. That was when she saw the child. A little girl, no older than 7, stood near the revolving doors. Her blonde curls clung damply to her cheeks, and in her hand she clutched a stuffed rabbit, its ears frayed from love. Emily Parker. Elena recognized her from the toy store events the mall hosted every December. The girl tugged insistently at her mother's hand. "Mommy, the doggie's hurt," Emily pleaded, her wide eyes shining with worry. "Can we help him?" The mother, already burdened with shopping bags and an umbrella fighting the wind, shook her head sharply. "No, sweetie. He's probably dangerous. Come away." Emily resisted for a heartbeat longer, her gaze locked on Diesel's huddled form. But then her mother pulled her away into the crowd, leaving the Pitbull alone once more. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She should walk away too. She had bigger problems than a stray dog. Complaints from vendors, tenant disputes, upcoming meetings with city inspectors. Harbor Point's future was balancing on a knife's edge. One more distraction could tip it into disaster, but she didn't walk away. Instead, she leaned forward against the balcony rail, studying the dog. Diesel didn't move. He didn't meet her eyes. But there was something about the way he held himself, even while collapsed. He wasn't begging. He wasn't aggressive or fearful. He endured, That look stirred something in Elena's chest, something she hadn't felt in years. A flicker of recognition, a memory long buried beneath spreadsheets and board meetings. Max, her childhood dog, a golden retriever with a heart too big for his body. He had once pulled her from a car crash when she was only 9. Her parents' constant arguments had faded into the background that day, replaced by sirens and the feel of Max's fur beneath her fingers. He had saved her, only to lose his own life when her father refused to pay for the surgery Max needed after the accident. Her heart had fractured then, in a way she had never fully repaired. She had promised herself never to rely on attachments again, never to risk that kind of heartbreak. Walls were safer than bridges. Control was safer than hope. But now, below her, another dog, scarred, steadfast, and silent, had appeared as if summoned by the storm itself. Elena straightened and turned away sharply. Her heels echoed against the polished floor as she walked back toward her office. The sensible part of her mind urged her to call animal control, to let the professionals handle it. It wasn't her problem. It couldn't be. She had Harbor Point to think of, employees who depended on her, customers expecting safety and order. Yet as she reached her office and closed the door behind her, the numbers on her laptop screen blurred. Rain tapped urgently against the window. Her mind refused to focus. For the first time in a long time, the charts and graphs seemed unimportant. The dog's eyes haunted her, not with fear but with the same quiet courage Max had shown so long ago. She pressed her palms against the desk and bowed her head. Outside, the storm raged, but beneath the mall's bright lights, Diesel remained still, not defeated, but waiting. Waiting for a decision that would alter both their lives forever. Morning broke over San Mateo beneath a sky scrubbed clean by the night's storm. Sunlight spilled across the wet pavement, turning puddles into silver mirrors. The storm had passed, but the weight of it lingered in the chill air and in the quiet unease that settled over Harbor Point Mall. Most early shoppers hurried by the main entrance, their breath fogging in the crisp autumn air. They barely noticed the figure curled near the glass doors. Diesel had not moved from where he had collapsed the night before. His fur was still damp. His eyes, though heavy with fatigue, remained open, scanning each passerby without fear, without expectation. To most, he was just a stray. A potential threat, a nuisance, but not to Frank Ortiz. Frank had arrived at the mall before dawn, as he always did. A former Marine with a solid build and a calm demeanor, he took pride in keeping the mall safe and welcoming. He had seen Diesel the previous night, and had expected, had hoped, the dog would be gone by morning. Yet there Diesel remained, steadfast as a statue. Frank didn't hesitate. From his lunchbox, he pulled out a plastic container. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. He set the sandwich carefully halved near Diesel and placed a bowl of water beside it. Diesel lifted his head slightly, sniffed, but made no move to eat. His eyes met Frank's calm and steady. "You're a tough one," Frank murmured. "Not looking for a handout, huh? Just holding your ground." He crouched down, his knees creaking in protest. Years ago, he had known dogs like this overseas. Dogs trained to sense danger, to protect their units without hesitation. Diesel had that same look. Watchful, patient, loyal, even without a master. "Don't worry, buddy," Frank added. "I'll keep an eye on you." From her office window above, Elena Matthews observed the quiet exchange. She had barely slept. Numbers and reports had occupied her thoughts for weeks. But last night, it had not been spreadsheets that haunted her dreams. It had been memories, memories of a different storm. A different night, and a dog named Max, Her childhood seemed like a story someone else had told her. She had grown up in a small house on the edge of San Mateo. Her parents had fought often, about money, about responsibility, about everything. The only constant had been Max, a golden retriever with wise eyes and boundless energy. He had slept at the foot of her bed, followed her through the backyard like a shadow. One rainy night, her parents' arguments had escalated. Elena, scared and confused, had fled the house, running into the street. She hadn't seen the car until it was too late, but Max had. She still remembered the sensation of being yanked backward, teeth gently gripping the fabric of her jacket as Max pulled her from the car's path. The driver had swerved. There had been a crash. Glass. Screams, then quiet. Max had saved her. But he had not escaped unscathed. The veterinarian had spoken of surgeries and treatments, expensive treatments. Her father had refused. Her mother had pleaded, but it had been no use. Max had been put down. At just 9 years old, Elena had learned the hardest lesson of her life. Sometimes love was not enough to save those you cared about. It had taken years to build the walls that now protected her heart. Walls made of responsibility, of control, of never again making promises she couldn't keep. And yet, as she watched Frank offer food and water to Diesel, something stirred inside her, something she had spent decades burying. Her phone buzzed. A reminder about a meeting with the leasing committee. More reports to review, more numbers to dissect, all urgent. All important, but not at this moment, what mattered most. Elena stood and stepped back from the window. Her reflection stared back at her, sharp-featured, composed. A woman who had learned to value pragmatism over sentiment, logic over emotion. And yet, the little girl within her, the girl who had clung to Max's fur and whispered thank you into his ear, refused to be silent. That evening, after the mall had emptied and the last shop had closed its doors, Elena walked the quiet halls alone. Her heels clicked softly against the polished tile. Outside, the air had turned colder, the wind carrying the promise of another storm. She found Diesel still in his place. The sandwich was gone, the water bowl empty. Frank's doing, no doubt. Diesel lay with his head resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded but alert. Elena approached slowly, careful not to startle him. She knelt, the cold seeping through her tailored slacks. Diesel lifted his head. "You're not just waiting for someone to feed you," she whispered. "You're waiting for someone to care." The dog blinked, as if acknowledging her words. She reached out, stopping just short of touching his fur. "My mother used to say, a strong community leaves no one behind," she said softly. "But I forgot that, for a long time." Her fingers brushed against Diesel's damp fur. The contact was brief, but it was enough. Enough to awaken the promise she had once made in the shadow of a young golden retriever's sacrifice. Elena stood, drawing a steady breath. "No one gets left behind," she vowed. "Not anymore." As she returned to her office, the night seemed a little less dark. Diesel was not just a stray. He was a silent guardian, a reminder, a chance to honor the past and rewrite the future. And Elena Matthews was not going to fail him. By the third morning, Diesel had become more than just a silent figure at the mall's entrance. He had become a symbol, though what he symbolized depended entirely on who was watching. For some, he was a survivor, a testament to resilience. For others, he was an unwanted problem waiting to escalate. The mall opened each day with a steady stream of customers. Many walked past Diesel without a second glance. Some quickened their pace, clutching shopping bags closer, casting wary eyes at the large, battle-scarred Pitbull who held his ground beneath the glass awning. Others paused, drawn by curiosity or something deeper. Emily Parker was among the latter. The little girl had convinced her mother to let her carry an extra sandwich in her backpack. Each morning when they approached the mall, Emily would quietly break away and leave the sandwich near Diesel before her mother could object. She had learned to be quick. Her mother, fearful but loving, had made her opinion clear. Stay away from the dog. Diesel had never moved toward Emily. He accepted her offering with a simple, solemn nod of his head, or so it seemed to her. She whispered to him each day, her words soft and secret. "You're not alone. I see you." Others noticed too. A group of teenagers from the local high school, regular visitors to the arcade, began snapping photos of Diesel. What started as casual posts soon grew into something bigger. They gave him a nickname, Harbor Guardian. The hashtag spread quickly, Harbor Guardian, across local social media. One user wrote, "This dog sits here rain or shine, never begs, just watches. Like he's protecting us." Another added, "We should protect him back." By the end of the week, Diesel had a small but growing fan base. Bowls of fresh water and treats began to appear near his chosen spot. Someone even left a blanket with the mall's logo neatly folded beside him. Yet, not everyone viewed Diesel with kindness. Among the sharpest critics was Veronica Chase. Veronica was a fixture of San Mateo society. Wealthy, impeccably dressed and well-connected, she held sway over the town's events and wielded her influence like a polished sword. To many, she was the unofficial gatekeeper of local standards. What Veronica disapproved of often did not last long. She had nearly tripped over Diesel one afternoon, balancing a designer handbag and a caramel latte. Her sharp heels had clicked indignantly against the tile as she caught herself. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen," she hissed to her assistant. The following day, she marched into Elena Matthews' office. "Elena, we need to talk," Veronica began without so much as a greeting. She placed her leather-bound planner on the desk with a deliberate thud. "That dog, that creature, he is a hazard. Someone is going to get hurt." Elena folded her hands calmly. "Diesel hasn't harmed anyone. He stays put. People approach him, not the other way around." Veronica's perfectly sculpted eyebrows lifted. "That may be true now, but what happens when he decides otherwise? Liability, Elena. Your mall's reputation, and if you won't act, I will take the matter to the city council. You know how closely they monitor businesses after the last safety audit." Elena felt the tightening in her chest, the weight of every decision pressing down. Veronica leaned in, her voice softening with feigned sympathy. "I understand compassion, truly, but you have responsibilities. Harbor Point Mall is struggling. One scandal could be the final straw." She paused, letting the silence drive home her point before sweeping out of the office, heels echoing like gunshots. Elena remained seated, staring at the space Veronica had just occupied. Her heart pulled toward Diesel. Logic warned her otherwise. If Veronica rallied enough support, and she could, Diesel's presence could indeed threaten the mall's fragile stability. That evening, as the mall quieted and shadows stretched long across the floor, Elena stood beside Frank Ortiz near the main entrance. Diesel lay nearby, chin resting on his paws, his gaze steady. Frank handed Elena a printout from the local online forum. "People are already arguing about him. Some want him gone, others, they're defending him." Elena scanned the comments. Praise mixed with fear, hope tangled with caution. "Do the right thing," one post urged. "Get rid of the dog before a child gets bitten," another demanded. The community was dividing itself over Diesel. Frank watched Elena carefully. "I know what you're thinking." "Do you?" she asked, voice low. "You want to protect him," Frank said, "but you're worried about the fallout." Elena nodded, weary. "If Veronica brings legal action, the mall could suffer. My employees, the shops, they depend on me. I can't risk them for a dog, no matter how much I—" She stopped herself. Frank's expression softened. He crouched and gave Diesel a scratch behind the ears. "Back when I was in the service, we used to say the easy road and the right road were never the same." Elena looked down at Diesel. His amber eyes met hers with a calmness that spoke volumes. Frank straightened. Sometimes, doing the right thing isn't easy. Elena exhaled slowly, the words sinking deep. The path forward would not be simple, but neither had any of the moments in her life that mattered. Diesel did not ask for saving. But he had already become something more than a stray. He was a test, a reminder. A silent guardian of both the mall and her convictions. As the mall lights dimmed for the night, Elena stood her ground. The decision ahead would be hard, but it would also be hers alone to make. And for the first time in years, she wasn't entirely sure where her loyalties lay. The days rolled by, each bringing new debates, more whispers, and a growing divide within the Harbor Point Mall community. But through it all, Diesel remained at his post, steadfast and silent beneath the entrance awning. His presence had become routine for some, and a lightning rod for others. Frank Ortiz continued his quiet guardianship, delivering food and water, patrolling the area, and gently deflecting those who viewed Diesel as a threat. Yet as he watched the dog, questions weighed heavily on his mind. Where had Diesel come from? What was his story before he became the mall's unintentional sentinel? Late one night, long after the mall had closed and the halls had fallen silent, Frank scrolled through his phone while sitting in the security office. On a community forum, a post caught his eye. It was buried beneath local chatter about school fundraisers and lost cats. But the headline made him sit upright. "Missing therapy dog. Last seen near Eastboro fire zone." Posted by Marcus Reed, dated nearly 6 months prior. Frank tapped the post and read carefully. The description fit Diesel perfectly. Male Pitbull, dark coat with white markings, a noticeable scar along his right shoulder. But it was not just the physical details that struck Frank. It was the story behind them. Marcus Reed, a decorated Army veteran, had adopted Diesel after returning from deployment overseas. Diesel had been specially trained as a therapy dog, helping veterans cope with post-traumatic stress disorder. According to the post, Marcus credited Diesel with saving his life more than once during dark nights filled with memories he wished he could forget. The bond had been unbreakable until the fire. A sudden blaze had consumed the small apartment complex where Marcus lived. In the chaos, Diesel had gone missing. Marcus had searched for weeks. Flyers had been posted, shelters visited, social media pleas sent into the void. No answers, until now. Frank took a screenshot of the post and forwarded it to Elena with a simple message. "I think we know who Diesel really is." The following morning, Elena met Frank outside the mall entrance. Diesel lay in his usual spot, eyes half-lidded but alert. Frank explained what he had found. "I already contacted Marcus," Frank said. "He's coming here today." Elena's heart tightened. She looked down at Diesel, who seemed to sense the shift in the air. His amber gaze was calm, as if he knew what was coming and had already accepted it. "I should be relieved," Elena admitted. "This could solve everything. Diesel will have a rightful owner again. The complaints might stop." But her words felt hollow. The thought of Diesel leaving the mall, leaving her, stirred a sadness she hadn't expected. Somewhere along the way, this battered dog had become part of her world. By mid-afternoon, Marcus arrived. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with close-cropped hair and a limp that spoke of old injuries. His eyes were weary but sharp, scanning the crowd until they settled on Diesel. The moment was almost surreal. The busy hum of the mall seemed to fade into the background. Shoppers paused to watch as Marcus slowly approached the Pitbull who had captured so much public attention. "Diesel?" Marcus said softly, kneeling. At the sound of his name, Diesel lifted his head fully and let out a quiet, rumbling sound, a cross between a sigh and a greeting. He pushed himself up with effort and stepped toward Marcus. Marcus reached out, resting his hand gently on Diesel's scarred shoulder. His breath caught. "It's really you." For a long moment, neither moved. The air was thick with the weight of reunion and the pain of time lost. Frank and Elena stood nearby, silent witnesses. "I thought I'd lost you for good," Marcus whispered. "I blame myself every day." Diesel leaned into Marcus's touch, eyes closing briefly. But when Marcus tried to coax him into standing fully, Diesel hesitated. He looked past Marcus to Elena, then to Frank, and finally back toward the mall entrance where he had spent so many days and nights. "He doesn't want to go," Elena said softly. Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. He was always stubborn. He knew when his mission wasn't done. Frank nodded. "He's become more than a stray around here. People call him the Harbor Guardian." Marcus smiled, though his eyes glistened. "That sounds like him." He stood slowly, taking in the bowls, the blanket, the quiet acts of care left by strangers who had become Diesel's new family. "I came here ready to bring him home. But maybe this is his home now." Elena frowned. "You don't have to—" "I know," Marcus interrupted gently. "But look at him. He's not just my dog anymore. He's found a purpose again. He's watching over this place. These people. Maybe that's what he was meant to do." Diesel's eyes met Elena's, and for the first time, she understood. Diesel wasn't lingering because he was lost. He was staying because he had chosen this role. Just as Max, her childhood dog, had chosen to protect her despite the risk. The cycle had come full circle. Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. "He's part of the community now, part of something bigger." Marcus nodded. "He's not just surviving anymore. He's making a difference." As the afternoon waned, Marcus crouched beside Diesel one last time. "Stay here, buddy. They need you more than I do." Diesel pressed his head into Marcus's hand once more before stepping back toward his chosen place by the entrance. By evening, the news had spread. Diesel wasn't a stray. He was a hero, a healer, a guardian who had chosen Harbor Point Mall as his new mission. Elena watched from her office as customers paused to greet Diesel, some kneeling to pat his head, others simply nodding in silent respect. For the first time in weeks, Elena felt clarity. Diesel was not just Marcus's dog. Not just a survivor, he was a symbol, a beacon of hope in a world often too quick to judge and too slow to forgive. And she would protect him as fiercely as he had protected them. The wind arrived without warning that afternoon. A cold front swept down from the hills, turning the sky a restless gray. Gusts rattled the glass doors of Harbor Point Mall and sent autumn leaves spiraling across the parking lot. Elena Matthews stood at the main entrance, speaking quietly with Frank Ortiz. They were discussing the latest vendor reports, numbers that seemed almost trivial now compared to the weight of recent days. Diesel lay nearby, his head resting on his paws, eyes half closed but ever alert. Shoppers bustled in and out, bundled against the chill. Children chattered. their voices echoing off the high ceiling. Among them was Emily Parker, her blonde curls bouncing as she tugged her mother toward the toy store. Elena smiled faintly at the sight. Despite the tension with Veronica Chase and the complaints swirling in legal documents, moments like this reminded her why Harbor Point had always been more than just a business. It was a place where families gathered, where memories were made. The tranquility shattered in an instant. A sharp crack split the air, loud enough to stop conversations mid-sentence. The massive advertising banner, mounted above the mall's exterior, had torn loose from its moorings. The metal frame, weakened by weeks of wind and rain, now swayed precariously. Before anyone could react, a final gust tore the structure free. It plunged downward, straight toward the crowd near the entrance. Emily stood directly in its path. Her mother screamed, frozen in place as terror rooted her to the ground. Time seemed to slow, every heartbeat an eternity. But Diesel moved. With a speed that defied his injuries and age, the Pitbull surged forward. His muscles rippled beneath his scarred coat. He crossed the space between himself and the little girl in a blur, jaws latching gently onto the back of her jacket. He pulled. Emily stumbled backward, too shocked to cry out. Diesel yanked her clear just as the metal frame crashed down, striking the tiles with a deafening roar. Shards of plastic and metal scattered across the floor. The mall fell silent. Then the screams began. Shoppers rushed forward. Emily's mother swept her daughter into her arms, sobbing with relief. Frank and other security staff secured the area, directing the crowd away from the fallen debris. Diesel stood protectively in front of Emily, his chest heaving, eyes sharp, despite the effort it had taken to save her. He did not bark or growl. He simply watched, as if daring any further harm to approach the child under his care. Elena arrived breathless, having run from the nearby office. The sight before her stole her words. Diesel, the supposed stray, the so-called threat, had risked everything for a child who had once left him a simple sandwich and whispered promises of friendship. Frank knelt beside Diesel, placing a steadying hand on the dog's shoulder. "Good boy," he murmured. "You did good." A bystander held up a phone, already recording. Within minutes, the video of Diesel's rescue began to spread online. Harbor Guardian resurfaced across social media platforms. News outlets picked up the story before the end of the day. Stray Pitbull saves child at local mall. Harbor Point's guardian angel. Hero dog defies stereotypes, saves young girl. Comments flooded in from across the state, and soon, across the country. Messages of support overwhelmed the mall's social media pages. Visitors brought flowers, dog treats, even handmade signs that read, "Thank you, Diesel." But not everyone celebrated. The next morning, Veronica Chase arrived, her expression tight with restrained fury. She carried a folder thick with paperwork. "Elena," she began without preamble, "I'm filing a formal complaint. This dog remains a liability. Emotional stories don't change the law." Elena stood firm. Diesel just saved a child's life. "And what happens next time?" Veronica countered. "Public sentiment is fickle. If that dog so much as nips at someone, the lawsuits will bury this mall. You can't gamble the future of Harbor Point on an animal." She handed over the papers. "The city inspector arrives in 3 days. Remove the dog or face a full investigation." Veronica's voice softened, though the edge remained. "I admire your compassion, Elena." "Truly, but compassion doesn't pay for structural repairs or legal defense." She turned and left, her heels striking the floor like a judge's gavel. Elena closed her eyes briefly, gathering herself. Logic echoed Veronica's warning, but her heart, the same heart that had once mourned Max, that had been stirred back to life by Diesel, told a different story. Frank joined her, quiet as ever. "She's not wrong about the risk," he said. "But risk isn't always a reason to back down." Elena nodded, her gaze drifting to where Diesel rested beside the security desk. Emily and her mother had visited earlier, tearfully thanking the dog who had saved their family. Diesel accepted the praise with humble dignity, eyes always watchful. "He saved a life," Elena whispered. "Now it's our turn to protect his." Frank smiled, the lines at the corners of his eyes deepening. "Sometimes the right thing isn't easy, but it's still right." Elena placed a hand over her heart, where the memory of Max and the weight of Diesel's silent loyalty rested together. The days ahead promised challenges. Legal threats, inspections, the possibility of hard choices. But one thing was certain. Harbor Point had a guardian, and no matter what came next, she would stand by him, just as he had stood by them. 2 days had passed since Diesel's heroic act. In those 48 hours, the mall had become a stage where hope and doubt wrestled beneath bright lights and whispered conversations. Visitors paused at the entrance not just to shop, but to glimpse the Pitbull who had saved a child. Small children left drawings beside his blanket. Teenagers brought treats. Seniors stopped by with soft words of gratitude. But Diesel's breath had grown shallow. His once watchful eyes seemed dulled, and the weight he carried, not just his own pain, but the expectations of a whole community, pressed heavier with each passing hour. Elena Matthews noticed every change. She had stood by Diesel's side through the media frenzy, the reporters' cameras, the waves of public opinion. Yet none of those voices mattered now. She saw only the dog beneath them all, the silent guardian who had watched over others until his own strength began to fail. On the second morning, Diesel did not rise to greet Emily as she came with her usual sandwich offering. Instead, he remained curled against the cold tile, his chest rising and falling with unsettling effort. Frank Ortiz approached quietly. "He's not well, Elena." "I know." Elena knelt beside Diesel, pressing a gentle hand to his side. The warmth she had come to expect was fading. "We need to get him help." "Now." Frank didn't hesitate. "I'll get my truck." Minutes later, they lifted Diesel into the back seat, wrapping him in the blanket embroidered with the mall's logo, the same one a kind stranger had once left for him. As they drove, rain began to fall again. Not the wild storm of days before, but a steady, relentless drizzle that seemed to mirror the heaviness in Elena's heart. The veterinarian's clinic was small but clean, tucked between a bakery and a row of old townhouses. The sign out front read, "Dr. Melanie Carver, DVM, Care for All Creatures." Dr. Carver met them at the door. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her brown hair and eyes that had seen both triumph and heartbreak. As they carried Diesel inside, she moved with calm efficiency. "He's severely dehydrated," she reported after the first exam. "Malnourished, and the strain from his recent injuries, especially saving that child, has taken a toll." Elena's throat tightened. "Can you save him, Doctor?" Carver looked between Elena and Frank. "With long-term treatment, yes, but it won't be simple. He'll need rest, proper nutrition, and possibly surgery to address older injuries that have worsened over time." Frank exhaled slowly. "We'll do whatever it takes." But Elena hesitated. In that pause lay the weight of 1,000 worries. Veronica's complaint was still active. The city inspector would arrive the next day. Harbor Point's financial future already wobbled like a house of cards. Legal fees, public relations crises, and now, potentially, veterinary bills that would stretch into the thousands. Logic whispered the harshest truth. Saving Diesel might push the mall into bankruptcy. Dozens of employees could lose their livelihoods. Families would suffer. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. This was the crossroads Veronica had warned about. Compassion or responsibility. Heart or survival. Then Diesel's eyes opened. They were not pleading. They held no fear. Instead, they reflected the same steady, patient watchfulness Elena had seen from the balcony on that first stormy night. It was the look of a guardian. Of someone waiting, not for rescue, but to see if she would keep the promise she had once made. A promise whispered long ago at Max's side. A strong community leaves no one behind. Elena's breath shook. She had failed Max. She had sworn she would never fail again. This was not just about a dog. It was about honoring the values her mother had built Harbor Point upon. About standing firm in the face of fear and choosing the harder path because it was right. "I won't abandon him," Elena said softly. Dr. Carver nodded with quiet approval. By the time the rain stopped, Elena had made arrangements for Diesel's treatment. The clinic staff prepared a comfortable space where Diesel could rest. Frank offered to cover part of the expenses, but Elena refused. "This is my responsibility," she said, "and my choice." The following morning, under a pale blue sky, Elena called a press conference outside the mall. Reporters gathered alongside community members, shoppers, and curious onlookers. Diesel, though still weak, stood beside her, wearing a new harness and a fresh bandana, the same deep blue as the Harbor Point Mall logo. Elena took a breath, letting the cool air steady her. "This dog," she began, "has shown us loyalty, courage, and selflessness. He didn't ask for recognition. He didn't ask for help. He simply did what was right, again and again." She paused, meeting the eyes of the crowd. "I've been asked to choose between protecting Diesel or protecting this mall's reputation and financial future. Today, I choose both." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. "Diesel will receive the care he needs. He has a home here, and from this day forward, he is not just a survivor. He is our official mascot and guardian." The guardian of Harbor Point. Applause broke out. Even those who had once doubted seemed moved by her conviction. Veronica stood at the back, arms crossed, but said nothing. Elena glanced down at Diesel, who leaned gently against her leg. His eyes held the same calm assurance. This was no longer just about the mall. It was about proving that compassion was not weakness, that loyalty, once given, deserved to be returned. And Elena Matthews would not break her promise. Not to Diesel, not to the community, not to herself. The weeks that followed Diesel's official announcement as Harbor Point's guardian brought change that no one could have predicted. News outlets across the state picked up his story. Headlines called him the silent savior and Harbor Point's four-legged hero. Photos of Diesel, wearing his blue bandana, standing proudly beside Elena Matthews, circulated widely. Messages of support flooded the mall's website. Strangers stopped by not to shop, but to meet the dog who had restored their faith in loyalty and second chances. But amidst the praise, a difficult conversation remained. Marcus Reed returned to the mall a few days after Elena's press conference. His limp had worsened with the cold weather, but his eyes were steady. He stood with Frank and Elena outside the Guardian's corner, the newly dedicated space where Diesel now rested on a plush mat, surrounded by tokens of gratitude left by the community. Elena took a slow breath. "Marcus, if you want to take him home now, no one will stop you. You're his rightful owner." Diesel, sensing the weight in her voice, looked up from his spot. His amber eyes were as calm as ever. Marcus crouched beside him, running a hand gently over the old scars on Diesel's shoulder. "I've thought about it, believe me. After the fire, losing him felt like losing the last piece of myself. He saved my life in more ways than one." Diesel leaned into Marcus's touch. "But I can't ignore what I see now." Marcus smiled, though there was a trace of sadness in it. "He's not my dog anymore. He's chosen this place, these people. He's found a bigger purpose." He looked at Elena. "You didn't just give him shelter. You gave him a mission. And he gave this community something to believe in again." Elena's throat tightened. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Diesel, as if in agreement, padded over to Elena's side and settled at her feet, his head resting lightly against her leg. The decision was made without words. Marcus stayed for a while longer, sharing stories of Diesel's early days as a therapy dog. He spoke of how Diesel had comforted veterans suffering from night terrors, how he had sat patiently through counseling sessions, offering his silent strength to those who had nearly given up. "He's always been a guardian," Marcus said. "All I ever did was recognize it." By the end of the afternoon, Marcus placed a small, worn dog tag into Elena's hand. It read, "Diesel, protector and friend." "He should keep this," Marcus said softly, "to remind everyone where he came from and how far he's come." As word spread that Marcus had officially entrusted Diesel to Harbor Point, public support surged even higher. Even Veronica Chase, once so determined to see Diesel removed, found herself cornered by public opinion and relentless media scrutiny. Facing overwhelming pressure, Veronica withdrew her complaint quietly. She issued a brief statement praising Diesel's heroism and expressing a newfound respect for the community's values. But Elena suspected Veronica's change of heart had less to do with genuine respect and more to do with avoiding a scandal. Either way, the fight was over. Diesel was home. Elena, with the help of Frank, Emily Parker's family, and dozens of volunteers, expanded the Guardian's Corner into more than just a space for Diesel. It became a tribute to animals who had made a difference in people's lives. Photographs lined the walls. Dogs who had rescued their owners, cats who had alerted families to fires, even birds who had provided emotional support during illness. Inspired by Diesel's story, Emily and her mother launched Harbor's Hope Fund, a charity dedicated to supporting animal shelters and helping stray pets find homes. Donations poured in. Schools arranged field trips to the mall, where children learned about compassion and the strength of second chances. Diesel, now healthier thanks to regular veterinary care, resumed his post at the entrance. Each morning he greeted early shoppers and the staff with a gentle wag of his tail. The scarred, weary dog, who had once collapsed beneath the mall's awning, now stood tall, embodying resilience and quiet dignity. But perhaps the most profound change was in Elena herself. For years, she had lived by numbers and forecasts, balancing ledgers and guarding against the chaos that emotions could bring. She had feared attachment because loss had once cut too deeply. Now, as she watched Diesel interacting with children, comforting anxious shoppers, and even posing patiently for photos, she understood something Max had once tried to teach her. The right attachments didn't weaken a person. They strengthened them. One crisp evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and lavender, Elena sat beside Diesel at the Guardian's Corner. Frank stood nearby, arms folded, a rare smile softening his usually serious face. Emily approached with her mother, offering Diesel a new bandana stitched with the words, "Hope lives here." As the crowd drifted away, Elena leaned down, resting a hand gently on Diesel's back. "Thank you," she whispered. "It turns out you never needed me. I was the one who needed you." Diesel lifted his head and pressed it against her side. No words were needed between them. As the evening deepened and the mall's lights flickered on, Harbor Point stood not just as a place of commerce, but as a testament to loyalty, healing, and the strength found in unlikely guardians. And Diesel, the silent protector who had once weathered a storm alone, now stood as the heart of a family without words, a family built not by blood, but by choice, courage, and the promise that no one would be left behind again. If this story touched your heart, let your voice be heard. Share your thoughts in the comments and consider subscribing to Veilmarks. With every new subscriber, you are not just supporting a channel, you are fueling a mission to bring more meaningful, heartfelt stories to life. As Helen Keller once said, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." Let us build a community where compassion and hope thrive. Remember, Diesel's story is not just about a dog. It is about us, about standing together when the world tells us to walk away. Watch until the final moment, because the ending is a testament to what we can achieve when we refuse to leave anyone behind.